I'm Kevin Davis. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, and we're going live today on a Saturday evening here in Germany, Saturday afternoon over there in the States. I'm joined by Father Stephen McKenna, obviously a very good friend of the show, who's earned at least a couple coffee mugs. Hopefully he has one coming on his
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
The
one of
father's
these days.
semi-famous for his coffee mugs, so which we always appreciate.
We
Um,
got the bear with me
the
coffee mug today.
Nice. I like it, Father. Also joined by my dad, Dan Davis, and hopefully joined by people in the comment section. Anyone who is here, please, let us know what you think. Let us know your questions. As we get going, we want to kind of say that first of all, we're actually going to just disagree on some of these things. I think Father's going to have different opinions than Dad and I do in regards to Donald Trump, to voting, etc. Dad and I obviously bow to Father in terms of understanding morality, etc. So, of course, we're gonna not disagree with Father there. And we also want to make it clear this is not a debate or anything. We're not coming
Right.
on trying to make it like, okay, who's going to win this? Of course, that'd be silly. We just want to talk about the election, about the debate that just happened between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and have two different opinions, which I think is kind of nice. I think we don't have that enough, Father. I mean,
hmm
I think we get too much in a echo chamber sometimes. I think it's good to have a little bit of a differing perspective on a podcast. Well, what say you, Father?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's I had that realization. I was just back east for funeral from a family funeral and got into. I have a cousin who's very smart. She's a lawyer at a Boston law firm and also a JAG lawyer on top of it. And she asked questions about a certain topic, and she's overall a fairly conservative person, but she had different questions about certain things, actually pertaining to some of the nuances in regarding abortion and whatnot. And
hmm
because she's very well schooled and very intelligent, we had a really great conversation where it was you were able to remove the. I always appreciate it when you can remove the emotion from it and actually converse back and forth and actually make points and have the other person have it sort of challenge their preconceived notions and see if, because I think everybody always comes out the other end better off because of
Right.
it. I think to have those type of honest, in philosophy we call them arguments. That terminology doesn't have the greatest connotation nowadays, but in its true sense, to be able to have converging ideas and to have true discussion about them where emotion isn't attached to it, but where intellectual honesty is supreme, and both listening and speaking. Those things are really productive, really good, and healthy, and sadly lacking in the world today. Really, that's
Right.
part of the true problem of what we have going on.
Well, and Dad, have you seen that on, I don't know, in the media, on social media or whatever? I mean, the response to this, I've seen it a bit, that it is totally, it's always 100% one way or the other, right? It's always Kamala won, Trump won,
Yeah.
Kamala. There's no in between. There's no nuance. There's no, yeah, there were good points, there were bad points. And I think that's kind of what I'm interested in today. I didn't actually watch the full debate. I actually didn't want to once we decided to do this podcast, because I thought it's almost good to have someone who hasn't seen it. I've seen some clips, obviously, um, but you really do hear both sides, and I think that it should make it an interesting conversation, Dad. I
Yeah.
think a kind of a dumb one considering what's come out of it, but
Well, and I think the first thing I would say here is that these debates really they don't move the needle much. I mean, they're really people who are Trump people are going to and finish the debate. Trump people who are Kamala people are, and you know that mainstream media is going to come out and say Kamala won. You know that Twitter's going to come out and say Trump won, and so really, what you're trying to do with these debates is you're trying to reach the middle people and people the independents and people who haven't made up their minds, and these are politically disaffected people. They're not really ones that are going. You're not going to win an argument with them in terms of the merit and the substance of your positions. Um,
Yeah.
and I think what I was going to get into, we'll get into. I'll let kind of Father give his overall thoughts, but really, in my mind, there's two ways that the debate can really move the needle on an election. One is if you have an iconic moment, okay, and we'll go through a couple of those that have been in the past. The other one is if there's body language that favors one candidate or the other. Otherwise,
Excuse
the
me,
debate's
excuse me, excuse me,
right.
excuse me. I'm
Yeah,
speaking.
I'm speaking. Yeah, and that and we'll get into some of the thoughts on where that goes as we get into it. But I think I'd like to maybe kick things over to Father McKenna, let him give his thoughts on the debate first.
Yeah, before we do, I
Well,
just want to say hi to everyone who's watching. Sede Picante. Some of our usuals are here. Christina, good to see you as well. Ethereal, Mom, thanks for joining. Everyone, please, yeah, again, leave us your comments. If we can, by the end of the show, we'll see if Father has some answers to some of your questions. Don't make them too hard. It's still only a Saturday. But please let us know what you guys think as well in regards to the debate and to the election voting, etc. So, Father, yeah, I guess we'll start with you. Yeah, you watched it. Did you watch the whole thing, Father? It was what, an hour long?
it's like 2 hours long, I think,
Yeah,
right?
close to
2 hours long. Goodness.
Yeah. It was I actually watched it live. It was a true heroic act on my part. I believe it'll be in the second nocturne of my matins lessons after I'm canonized. To have sat through an entire debate. Actually, it is it is kind of funny. It's I Bishop McGuire looked at me like, "Why are you going to watch the debate?" And I said, "Well, first off, number one reason for watching is sort of like I'm hoping that there's going to be some bust out the popcorn moments, like in 2016 when he told Hillary that she would have been locked up in prison, and
right.
like I'm in favor of Donald Trump's mean tweets. That's my favorite part about him, honestly. And so, um, but then in addition to it, I thought it was important to be able to sort of speak intelligently because it just I knew it was going to be sort of a hot topic thing, and I wanted to approach it as completely unbiased, as completely objectively, and just try to get a gauge of where I thought things might start moving or whatever. And to, to your point, Mr. Davis, that it's funny that like yeah, the whole entire purpose of the debate is for the undecideds, and I went in, I was saying to somebody, I said the fact that there are undecideds scares me more than anything else
Right.
because that level of room temperature IQ must be just beyond the pale at this point in time. I figure there's three camps that pretty much everybody should firmly be in at this point, either Trump, Kamala, or none of the above. And if you haven't figured that out, I just want to know who's sitting at home going, gee, well, that was a good point, but that also,
Right.
and I'm like taking notes or something like that as to what
Oh,
they said.
Father, I think it's even worse because I think it's also about, okay, how did she look? She looked good on that one, or her answer was nice, or it's
Yeah,
not even about facts, or it's not writing down their stances, and it's not their platforms. It's just like who delivered the punch, who looked sexier,
yeah,
whatever. I mean, it's so absurd that it
yeah.
is, again, as you say, Father. It's pretty sad. It's like you're deciding based on this,
Mhm.
Yeah.
really?
Well, I mean, I mean, when you look back at history, those are the things that do decide elections. Though it is said
Mhm.
that John F. Kennedy won because they had the first public televised debate, and so it was the women seeing a young, handsome man running for president versus this old curmudgeon in Nixon that swayed the election towards Kennedy to win ultimately. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I bet there's a lot more than we would care to probably admit in that level of shallow reality to these things. So I honestly approached it from just wanted to see um, what to take away from it, and I think I texted you sort of like just downtroddenly afterwards
Mhm.
and said that the clear loser of the debate was the American people because
Yeah.
this is what we have to choose from.
Right.
And the and that if it was truly just if I tried to approach it from the mindset of the undecided, whoever they may be, I thought that she came out looking better than I expected her to, and he came off looking worse than I anticipated him to be. That I thought he had very little in the way of substance. He fell into all of their traps, and granted, it was 3-on-1. You know, it was a lopsided debate stage, but he knew that going into it. So you have to prepare for that. He knew every single trap that they set for him that he fell into. You know, getting caught up in arguing about whether people leave the rally early or not. It's like you could have seen that a million miles away. They should have told you that day one. Don't chase this ball down this track. And he did every single time, and he missed opportunities. Like he missed the point of the questions or the answers that he should give. And then the biggest thing for me was that he had several times in the debate where he could have had true, just very easy mic, like take away, like, okay, you're a 3 against 1. It was still teed up for him to be very easily combated. Like the mistakes that they made were super glaring, and he could have easily come off, you know, a clear victor had he just followed after those points. Like question number 1, they asked Kamala, are the people better off 3.5 years ago today than they are 3.5 years ago? Nowhere did she even remotely sniff an answer to that question.
Right.
It was, I mean, she started talking about growing up a middle-class kid and her mom working hard and what the heck? And all he had to do was say, you never answered the question because you can't, and then yield back his time. He could have ended the debate right then and there. That would have been enough to just clarify that. He didn't even address that. There's another time where she called him soft on the Taliban and terrorists because he invited the head of the Taliban to Camp David and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I know I'm sitting here, a guy who doesn't follow politics all that much, and I know that they send approximately $65 million a week directly to the Taliban. It is 11 o'clock at night on September 10th. Like you're an hour away from September 11th, and you could just say that, kick over the podium, say Trump out, and then like walk off the stage, and would have crushed it in that way. And there were several other times, and like, how in the world do you actually miss those things? It was just from a pure performance standpoint. And I thought she sounded, I know most of the stuff that she said was lies. Most of the stuff he said was lies. And at the end of the day, one sounded more composed than the other one did. He just sounded angry. And I thought, oh, like, you know, it was, if I was an undecided, not knowing which way to go, the one who seemed more in control of themselves was her at the end of the day. It was, I mean, both of them were terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like, but I was genuinely surprised that it was like, what the heck happened here? You know, like this could have been, he should have mopped the floor with her, and he didn't even.
Well, I guess I thought that maybe, and again, I didn't watch it, but from the highlights, lowlights, I thought he got overcoached. I think, you know, they're getting into Trump's head and they're saying, hey, you know, be nice. She's a woman, you know, don't, you know, be nice, you know, don't. And I think they're taking him away from himself a bit, you know, and a bit of his, you know, gunslinger mentality. And I think that, you know, it's like in sports, right? If you have a quarterback who's, you know, say Brett Favre, and you say, okay, Brett, you know, stay in the pocket, you know, don't do anything crazy. You know, okay, he might win you some games, but he's not going to be. It's not Brett Favre, right? I mean, he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. And I think that's what I think they've been too. He's been too overcoached when he's been trying to be too presidential. People don't want presidential. I think they actually want Trump back. I think you said at the beginning, Father. They want him to be the gunslinger.
Right.
Well, I think he could have been successful either way. He could have been successful by being disciplined and actually bringing out numbers and figures and facts. He did none of that. Or he could have been successful him going full on Trump angry tweet and calling out the moderators, calling out Kamala, and and doing those things. He could have, and he did not, neither one of them. He just seemed like the angry old man yelling at people to get off his lawn, and that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's like, oh, I just thought, like, your narcissism is showing because you can't not fall into these traps. It was just, I thought it was just like I said, there was so many opportunities where he could have been like MJ from the foul line, if you want to stick to like your sports analogy, like just come in and dunked on her, and he whiffed every time. It was very little. I think any successes that he had were like accidental successes, almost. The cats and dogs thing. I had no idea when I watched the debate that would be the thing that would dominate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was, and I thought, well, actually, that's in the plus column, because most average people know that there's like video footage of people capturing geese and killing cats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have regular people reporting on this stuff. So it's not that they can actually cover it up. And it's really immaterial to anything in regards to the debate, but that dominated a lot of the news cycle. So in a sense, he won with something with that, but it was an accident. Another thing that I thought was sort of accidental success to it was that people talked about how the moderators were so overtly against him. That's not Trump's doing. That's just what happens when you go on ABC and the head of ABC is the person who put Kamala and her husband together. It's like, that's what you're going to get. It's so, I think his majority of his successes are, like I said, not really his own doing. He sort of happened to pop into those. And then she came off not sounding like a cackling, word salading moron. And which again, I think was a sort of a bit of a plus on her column, because that's what most people were afraid of her. It's not a mistake that she immediately afterwards wanted a second debate. I think that's the most telling part of it all, is that she wanted to do it again, because she hasn't taken an interview up until this point, and then the first thing she wants to do is an unscripted televised event squaring off with Donald Trump all over again.
Her interviews are so bad. She just did one the next day, I think, after the debate, and they're like, "So what's your plan for the economy?" And she's, big hopes and dreams and big things. I have big plans for the economy. So Dad, so you watched the whole thing then too, I assume. What were your takeaways? I assume your view of it is fairly much like
it is pretty close. Yeah, it really is. First question for you, Kevin: is there a limit on the number of sports analogies we're allowed to use here?
Never.
Because no, the term that I heard with Trump was layups. He missed a lot of layups, and I think that was absolutely true. First question: okay, he should have fired back at Kamala Harris and said, Kamala, when did you know that Joe Biden was cognitively impaired?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, there's so many things, so many lost opportunities, like Father said, that he could have jumped on. He just didn't jump on. So, but like I was saying to begin here, I think that there are two things you can do in a debate that really move the needle, and we've seen it over time. One is the iconic moment. In fact, Sadie Picante mentioned this in the comments. And Kevin, if you want to play the first clip that I sent you, this is probably the most classic moment that was a debate winner for Ronald Reagan.
Just a sec.
If you can get it.
Yeah,
but basically, I'm going into 1980. We got it. Okay.
Yeah. President Reagan. Mr. President, I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Now, if you look there, Kevin, it was actually the iconic moment. The iconic moment was actually Walter Mondale's reaction to it, and how he was busting out laughing. Reagan was really struggling in that campaign leading up to that moment, and I think that after that, there was absolutely no question he was going to win. I mean, the election was basically over at that moment. And you've had some others. You had one, and I didn't give you a clip of this, but you had I think it was 1992. It was vice presidential debate, Dan Quayle versus Lloyd Bentsen. And I thought Dan Quayle wiped the wiped the floor with him as a Republican, but Lloyd Bentsen had the famous line, I knew John Kennedy. John Kennedy was a friend of mine. You know John Kennedy. And basically the election kind of hinged on that moment. And then, like Father said, 2016, you had Trump with the famous "you'd be in jail," and I think he went from being on the outside, kind of looking in. That really turned that. And really, I don't think that there was a moment like that in this one. But the one that I took a day or two to just let the whole thing kind of play out and see how the public was going to digest it, and it was that cats and dogs one. I don't know if you want to play that, Kevin. That was just that it in fact, well, go ahead and play the clip real quick.
And millions of people to come into our country and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I just want to clarify here.
Go ahead and remove and shut that down. And that was okay. That was a funny line. That news had been kind of coming up for a day or two, and then all of a sudden it was kind of front page news, and he went with it. This was something I totally didn't expect. That by the next morning, you had an entire subculture growing up around that. And if you want to play that last clip that I sent you, Kevin, this is just kind of indicative. There was a ton of this stuff that came out like the next morning.
Eat the cat, eat the cat. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Eat the cat, eat the cat. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Eat the cat.
Oh my, yeah, that's and that is what won Trump the presidency.
That's my favorite part of. Again, like I said, I went into it with popcorn in hand, hoping for something. Right. And it was the internet that won the debate after the fact, because to be able to have like Alf memes with him with a cat and a sandwich and things like that. I mean, that made me feel better about everything after that. I was like, well, at least we still get good memes.
We got good memes out of it, exactly. Yeah. And so
and your point on Quayle too. It also helps if you can spell potato to be able to.
He was a goofball. He was kind of, I don't know if I would say Tim Walz type goofball, but he was a little young and immature as a VP. But anyways, so I think Trump kind of won that. And what was interesting about the debate is that after the debate, almost all of the polls that were taken showed that Kamala Harris won the debate. I mean, even on Twitter, where basically Trump owns Twitter, about 25%. The polls were showing that Kamala won the debate. However, the undecideds who are being polled on which way they wanted to go were not all, but I mean 60% moving towards Trump. And it wasn't just one poll. It was Reuters, I think, had one, and Rich Barris had one, Rasmussen. A number of the different pollsters were looking at had these small groups, these small focus groups, and the small focus groups were breaking for Trump. So I left a little bit of a conundrum. Okay, how did this happen? And really, I think he got to the second point, which is that people are looking at body language when they look at these debates. Okay, and I don't know that there's great the historical perspective I was going to bring up was what Father already said was John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. That Richard Nixon came out unshaven. Okay, and I think he just didn't look as good on camera. And of course, John F. Kennedy was a lot better looking. And yeah, I think the polls from people who had watched the debate on TV were in favor of Kennedy. The ones who watched on radio or listened on radio
Right.
were in
Exactly.
favor of Richard Nixon. And so it really had, I mean, that just that body language and the body language again. I think that Father's right that Trump came off of as angry and frustrated with the way things are. But I think he tapped into a frustration of the people who are out. We're all frustrated. We go to the store shop, we go shopping and eggs cost $4 a gallon or $4 a dozen. And,
Yep.
Prices are out
When
of
he
control.
when he said that about people can't afford to buy eggs, bacon, and cereal, that was a good point for him because it was definitely um, the things he pointed out were the things that everybody buys. It was
Right.
and you could tell, like, yeah, he had that sort of like angry lean forward a little bit towards the podium a bit. And yeah, his dogs and cats part and the eggs, bacon, and cereal, both of those were, I think, sort of things that have the visceral response
Yeah. Yeah.
of
And
people.
I think that's what, and I don't know if that's what he was shooting for. It's kind of what he got. But and then on the other side, Kamala Harris came off as just being snooty and arrogant, and and she did this thing where she put her fist on her chin, and that was, I mean, that was a terrible move on her part. And I think that's what happened with these focus groups. Yeah, Kamala. I mean, basically, may have had the questions in advance. We don't really know, but I mean, she had probably 20 different talking points that she had memorized and she was ready for them, and she rolled off the talking points, she got them out, and she was fairly eloquent and all that. But her body language said that people don't like her. They just like Hillary Clinton, they just don't like her. And I
Well, I
think
think,
that's
yeah, I think the hard part about that stuff though is that I don't know about other people, but my tendency is to look at who's talking, and so I don't know how much of that stuff is missed versus how much of it is seen only in after the fact. Like if you turn on to like a Fox News commentary on it, they're all going to point out, look at what she's doing, like how condescending her facial and fake her face movements and everything are. But I didn't really notice it all that much during the debate because
yeah, me
if
too.
he was talking, I was looking at him. If
Right,
she was
right.
talking, I was looking at her. And so like that's what I wonder about those things being missed, because I think then it just depends on which news feed you sign up for the next
Right.
morning.
And that's something that's really changed a lot over the last 4 years, especially over the last 20 years. When I was growing up, when you would have these debates, and then afterwards, who would you have to rely on? You would have the networks, and then if you were conservative, you might have your neocons. You'd have Bill Kristol, and you'd have George Will, and you'd have Ann Coulter and voices like that. But I mean, for the most part, you didn't have this wide open Wild West internet that now gives its feedback that really honestly is a lot more organic. And I think you're going to get the will of the people, but you're going to have a lot of voices, a lot more voices than you used to have.
Well, and Trump got memed into office in 2016, right? That's what they always say. And excuse me,
Mhm.
because he was really he rode that first wave of memeing, and it makes you wonder if that's going to be the same case now. But honestly, I actually think the voters are smarter now.
Yeah.
I think that the Western world is waking up to the whole immigration thing, and you see that now. It just happened in Germany, in Netherlands. They're closing the borders. No more immigration from the east, which is shocking. I mean,
Hmm.
anyone who knows anything about Europe right now, they've let them open for, I don't know, what, 8-10 years now. So the fact that they're closing them down makes me think that we really have shifted to a different, I don't know, direction, I suppose. And I think that makes me think that
I don't know that
I just can't
people are
imagine
smarter.
Trump
I,
losing.
I
More hot
don't
and
know that
cold,
people.
maybe.
No, I think
Maybe.
it's more. I think it's more. It's so glaringly obvious now that there are
Yeah.
what the problems are. I think the problems are reaching sort of fever pitch, and so when people are getting knife attacked in the cities of Europe and throughout Europe by these animals, well, or you have people dying in the United States from migrants here, that are coming in from gangs and things. People are naturally upset about that. I don't know that necessarily goes to, sort of changes things in the way of the intellect of the voter. I think it's just, unfortunately, I think it's just one of those things that who can come out and say that, who can convince people that they're less responsible for the crisis is the one that's going to sort of be where it is. I think you see that more clearly like in a place like the UK, where there is really no substantial difference between candidates over there at all on anything, but they swing hard voter wise back and forth across the side. Like they have an election and it's like 80% conservatives, and then the next one's like 80% left, Labor Party, because it's just who can better communicate that the other guys are the problem, not us. But there's actually not really any substantial difference between anybody over there.
But they had, I mean, in England though, Father, they had what's the guy's name?
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage, yeah. So he ran for 2 months and won some seats in England. I mean, with like no campaign. So he pretty much saw that. And in England, they just decided, okay, the conservatives aren't conservative. They've thrown us under the bus for, I don't know, 10 years. So literally no one voted. So it was the worst turnout in 60 years or something like that for the left in England. But nobody voted for the conservative. Nobody. They said enough. Yeah. We're done with you. We're not doing this anymore. And a few people voted for Farage. So I actually think in England, I think you see, I could be wrong about this. If anyone from England is watching, let me know. But I actually think you do see a more intelligent voter. I think people I think maybe it's because of the media that they can watch, that they see more of the full story rather than just what's being pushed out by the media. They're actually starting to see, okay, look, we are being just abused by our government and we have to do something about it. So they just say, okay, fine. Conservatives, you're not going to help us, then you're done.
I don't know. I was over there like up until like just a couple days before the election. So I got their news, got their everything, and talked to a number of people throughout the country. And I got the impression that everybody was just like hands in the air, like whatever. It's just like the whole thing. So, I mean, in a sense, it's intelligent because they're just like, whatever, it's just a giant disaster anyways, and there's nothing we can do about it, And so they kind of all everybody seemed to have these guys didn't do it very good, so maybe we'll just try it again with the other side. And, like this very much this attitude of just exasperated by the whole entire process.
Well, and that's, I think, historically, I go back quite a ways. I mean, I really cut my teeth politically on Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And I think at that point, there was a substantial difference between the two and how the two are going to handle things. But you get past the Reagan era and George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis and, Bob Dole and Bill Clinton and Mitt Romney, and you can roll all these forward. And for me, there was not a lick of difference between any of them, really. I mean, they might have a little bit of different rhetoric out there, but they're all going to govern exactly the same. And so I think for the longest time, I know for me, I checked out of politics for the longest time. I think I'm trying to remember back how many times I skipped election, which I'm kind of ashamed of, and how many times I voted third party, or how many times I, because I mean, for the most part, from '88, I think I voted for George H.W. Bush in '88, and then kind of realized who he was. Bam, he was a bad man. And from there forward, all the way up till Donald Trump, I don't think I voted red or blue. I think I maybe made a mistake and voted for John McCain, but for the most part, I just was completely checked out. Now, Trump kind of changed my my outlook on things, and maybe I'm just getting sucked into a trap there, but I'm not sure. But no, I agree that for the longest time, American politics has just been a uniparty. They trade back and forth. They both do all the same things. One's taking us to socialism quicker, and one's taking us to socialism a little bit slower.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on that, because it was the same for me. I mean, not going back as far, but I didn't vote for McCain or in the McCain election or in the the Romney election, because I was just like, what am I even doing here? I think, and I'm trying to remember if I mean, I would have been young, so maybe I voted for Bush, the George W. Bush, just because it's like, well, I got like just so young and like got to vote for somebody type of feel to it. But I don't even know if I did that, to be honest. I think I did probably for that one, but otherwise, I just didn't. Once the veneer was sort of peeled off a bit, and then when 2016 came around, I voted for Trump. I did, because Bishop Dolan voted for Trump that first time around, and as did Father Chicada, because it was the first time there was a break from the normal rhetoric. There was the first time where it was, ooh, maybe there's some sort of outsider, there's some sort of break from the uniparty and everything. And I really put, I don't put any stock in things, but I was like, hey, I think we all thought it was worthwhile. And we gave them the old go. And then I think we were sort of like a group divided as to whether or not to vote for him the second time around, because it was still like the bloom had fallen off the rose for sure, but we still weren't 100% sure. I vaguely remember, I think I may have voted just because I think I remember going to the poll without a mask on and sort of being pretty pumped up about that.
Right.
But otherwise, but I wasn't happy about it. And but I don't think that Bishop Dolan did. But I know, and Father Chicada died, but I know he was intending to vote. So it's like this sort of division amongst us as to whether or not, like, we're all sort of on the fence about it. But so like that's where I'm approaching this from, is not from somebody that is opposed to voting or even opposed to choosing that lesser of two evils. It's just now it's like coming to the realization. And I think actually the debate ended up solidifying even more of that for me. I mean, I was already sort of there, but not sort of, I was very much there, but it really solidified a lot of that for me, because you started to realize the things that they argue about were minutia and accidents and things that were like unsubstantiated anymore. And I guess if we kind of get into that aspect, that was what I sort of, like some of the things that were like were glaring to learn over the last bit of time, was you saw in the debate the abortion topic came. There is no pro-life anything anymore. And so, well, the big reason for traditional Catholics to vote is, well, pro-life. Well, despite saying he's the most pro-life president ever, he isn't. He isn't even, doesn't even sniff it. Yeah, it's like, so I looked up some of the stats and figures from 2016 to 2019 during his time as president. Just for Planned Parenthood alone, the increase in abortions was 50,000 annually, which is the greatest jump in over 10 years. And from 2016 to 2019, the increase for federal funding to Planned Parenthood was over $100 million. And that was the greatest jump in 9 years, for the 9 previous years before that. And that's just for Planned Parenthood. And those were from Heritage Foundation, those numbers. And then in addition to it, we see now, like, he's not only, so he touts the Roe v. Wade, but then in reality, he insists on maintaining the exceptions, as he calls it, and also ensuring that people can have the morning after pill. He opposed the 6-week limitation for Florida. And so the argument just becomes, can you kill babies at 9 months, or should we wait, or should we put like a limit on it at 6 months? Or, I mean, we're talking, that's literally what they're arguing about in the debate. And he goes one further than even Kamala by saying he's going to federally fund IVF, which 93% of the fertilized eggs, the babies there, end up terminated. It's so it's like, oh yeah, we want more babies, so we'll give you one, so long as we can kill 10 others. It becomes, you start to zoom out and you realize, like, wait a second, we are really being sort of fed these things, and that doesn't take into account the fact that if we're pro-life, well, how many died by the jab that he facilitated in coming in, which low estimates are 36 million worldwide by American company pharmaceutical COVID products. And so it really is, those are the things that, like, so the pro-life argument is that. Then it's the two things that trads always run on, or try to speak, are pro-life and anti-LGBT stuff. And that one was when Biden had the Marriage Act bill, he held a giant LGBTQ party at Mar-a-Lago to celebrate that. And he literally said during that, I'm going to fight harder than any other Republican for gay rights. And they were even the left was championing him for being so pro gay agenda and pro all these other things. And so it comes down to, now again, it becomes the minutia, and that's what we get distracted by. It's an argument of whether or not transgender people can play in girls' sports. Well, who cares? I honestly do not care, because the argument should be, should anybody be even allowed to have a sex change? No, the answer is no. The beginning end of argument whatsoever. We're arguing about sports. You haven't fixed any of the problem. It's just window dressing to sound slightly more conservative for this more conservative side, and slightly more liberal for the liberal side of things. And then I was looking at, like, debt. Well,
real quick, Father. I mean,
Yeah.
before we move on, because I think it would work if we do one topic at a time.
Sure.
So I think, Dad, maybe you can respond to the abortion issue, or if you can. I don't know. Again, this isn't a debate, but I think
no, it's not a debate, right?
It's good to see,
and I mean,
both sides.
Everything you're saying, Father, I can't disagree with. I mean, absolutely. Trump. In fact, if you look at who he has surrounded himself not so much J.D. Vance, I think Vivek Ramaswamy, who have kind of come into his moral center, but you look at RFK Jr., you look at Tulsi Gabbard, these are basically Bill Clinton Democrats. Elon Musk, Trump himself, they are Democrats of more or less 1990, and I think that's kind of, and what you're seeing here is that this group, I think, the 1990 Bill Clinton Democrats are kind of galvanizing the political right and the political left. And the way I'm seeing things is that, and the way I'm seeing things is that basically the political world has shifted on its axis. Okay. It used to be, up until 8 years ago, we were left versus right. We were conservative versus liberal. We were, Republican versus Democrat. And now I think what's happened, and this has even been the last few months, is that we've now become a matter of the machine versus the people. Okay, the uniparty versus everybody else. So look at how all of the various candidates are falling into line with the different groups. So you got Trump, who's gotten the endorsement of Elon Musk and RFK Jr. in them. But then on the other side, you've got Kamala, has gotten the endorsement of Dick Cheney, okay, of George W. Bush, at least maybe not him, but all of his people. You've got 200 old Republican uniparty type people. Well, ask yourself the question: was Dick Cheney really ever pro-life? If he's actually going to line up with Kamala Harris now, who's a radical on abortion, I don't think he really ever was. I'm not sure that the Republican, and personally, I kind of think that the Republican pro-life platform was just a way to get social conservative votes and social conservative money.
For sure.
I don't.
For sure. I mean, that was that's why it was so important for, like, what gets missed by everybody is that, that it was in the writing in the charters, right? That the Republican Party supports being, putting or at least limiting abortion, and it supports combating the unnatural marriage and things like that. And it was Trump who surreptitiously removed all of that.
But he removed it. But then at the same time, George W. Bush had a terrible record on pro life, and
all of them.
all of
every
them. I mean,
single every single one of
Reagan.
them.
Yeah, even Reagan.
Mhm.
I mean, Reagan had he actually, California, believe it or not, I was doing some research on this. California, 1967 was the third state to liberalize abortion laws when he was governor. Now, he did that and he regretted it. And he later became very much pro-life and even put a pro-life bill in front of Congress 1988 that didn't pass. But he also gave us Sandra Day O'Connor to the Supreme Court, who was pro-abortion, and because of whom Roe versus Wade never had a chance of being even reviewed, during kind of the Reagan, Clinton, Bush type days.
Yeah, and that's why I say that the actions are where the beliefs are, because
right.
It's Reagan too. I think it was an inveterate liar. I mean, it was like he put the bill out because he knew it wasn't going to pass, but he allowed what happened in California to happen, and then he runs as a conservative for the presidency. Oh, I regret that happened. But then you give him Sandra Day O'Connor, or like one of the big things that had me realize, like, oh my goodness, wait a second, was that somebody said to me about Reagan, was that they had the pro-life march every single year that he was in office. It ended basically at his doorstep, and never once did he step outside to even acknowledge anybody. So it's like, where are your actions versus where are your words? And I think that's always the thing that has to come out with politicians about these things. It's is that reality, because it was the funny thing about it is that while I was watching the debate, again, sort of like the same happening about it, was that Kamala's pleading for not having the government interfere with a woman's choice on these things, and Trump is in favor of having the people get involved to decide in each state, but then publicly comes out and says, "Oh, that's a bad idea for that state," when they try to actually put restrictions on it. And it's it's like, so your actions are really, you're trying to control that narrative. And it's like, I would look at it the other day. It was just the other day, North Dakota. The courts of North Dakota, one of the most conservative states we probably have out there, shut down any kind of abortion ban for North Dakota. So removing Roe v. Wade hasn't done anything to the abortion discussion. Yet in fact, right there. In fact, we had more abortions the year after Roe v. Wade was removed than they had for any time in the previous 10 years.
Yeah, Kevin, if you can find it, I sent you a graph on that. It goes back a little bit in our discussion, but no, it shows exactly that, Father. That there was a surge down immediately right after, and this is not actually the number of abortion. This is the sentiment in favor of abortion. It dove down very quickly right after Roe versus Wade. But then the media started turning abortionists and women having abortions into martyrs, and it spikes up again. And so it was one of the reasons I think that, Lisa and I talk about this a lot, that one of the reasons the Republicans have gone soft on abortion is because they know it's a losing issue. The Democrats have nothing else to run on. And if they could run on abortion and actually, have a clash and a philosophical, go at it between they're going to probably win, because the sentiment is on there. Yeah, there's that poll. It's just really, really interesting. It's Americans who want the laws to be less strict by party, and look at what happened, especially with the I think it was 2021. Was it 2021 when Roe versus Wade was overturned? But that number just shoots up.
22.
And 22, and in 2022, the Democrats basically ran on abortion for the midterm elections, and they won that election. I think that's what they wanted to do again this year. And
again, that's where the failure comes in for anybody actually having the discussion about it, is that they get caught up in these accidentals that don't matter.
Right.
What, how late is too late to abort a baby? Until somebody actually points out what is the only substantial distinguishing mark of when something goes from existence to non-existence, when cells become a human being. The only distinguishing mark is actually conception, right? That's the only time you could, even if you remove religion from it completely, that's the only point where you could say that is a new being, because genetically speaking, it is no longer the father, it is no longer the mother, it is a combination of the two. And so therefore, that's the starting point. Until you can go back to that, then it's always this open-ended question that is the ebb and flow of the will of people whenever. And I do think, to be fair, I don't think that I don't think the removal of Roe v. Wade is the sole cause of, it's not that it's like, that it purely is just to show the inefficacy of that removal, although it does essentially show that it had no bearing whatsoever. There are other causes to it too. There's definitely a financial aspect to it. There's definitely a reactionary aspect to it. Like, people are afraid that, maybe I wouldn't be able to procure an abortion later because now Roe v. Wade's gone and where there's going to be a vote or something like that. But I think that ultimately ends up being a minor statistic in comparison to just the fact that it just goes to show that it looks great for the pro-life argument, but in actuality does nothing substantially for the country.
Right.
Especially when, how bad can abortion restrictions be when they can literally drive like the abortion school bus up to the DNC? Like,
right,
come on out and kill your kids. It's like, we'll give you an ice cream afterwards too. It's unbelievable. And so, but you can't do that if there's actual restrictions out there. It just doesn't exist. But when you say, I remove Roe v. Wade, everybody pay attention over here. And then on the other side, take your eraser and scrub out from the official charter of the Republican Party that Republicans no longer resist abortion anymore. Yeah. It's what have you actually achieved? You've achieved the latter. The former was the distraction. And that's, I think, the takeaway from that is, again, actions are the part that really speaks louder than the words ever do. Especially doubly so when it's politicians, when it's probably not true whatever's coming from their mouths. And so
So Father, if you don't mind, I think we're coming up on an hour here, and I kind of want to just I'll give you my basic conclusion to the whole thing, but really, we're looking to your advice in terms of how we go forward from here. So, we look at the more or less train wreck that we've got out there today, and it's a bad situation, lesser two evils and all that. And we know that, okay, how do we fix this? Well, we know, number one, we pray the rosary, right? We go to mass, we sanctify our souls, we go to confession, we take care of our spiritual lives, we become the light to the world. That's all, I think, at the core of what we do to make the world a better place. But then on the other side, we're supposed to be active socially, and for me, I guess what I would say is I've got 4 layers that I would look at in terms of, or 4 tiers that I would look at in terms of how I would support a candidate. Tier 1 is, would I give them my vote? Tier 2 is, would I publicly support them? Tier 3 is, would I give them money? And tier 4 is, would I give them time? And where I look at Trump right now, for me, I'm about 1.5, right? I'd give him my vote, and I'm a little bit uneasy about even giving him my public, support, especially because LGBT, soft on abortion, the Israel, everything else that is questionable. So that's kind of where I am. So I guess my question to you is, where would you recommend that Catholics go in a political, social sense to try to help us out of this mess?
So that's a great question, Dan. And number one thing is your first point hit the biggest crux, the biggest point on the head. And I think it's something that, like, I was actually something that I was thinking about talking about with other people beforehand, because of the fact that it's something that I think all of us, myself included, even on this, not myself, I should say myself especially included on this, is we all need to give ourselves the honest, like, I don't like what I'm going to see when I look in the mirror, but I need to see that reflection back at myself and see what it is. We need to think about it in terms of that. The reality is that we are in a spiritual crisis situation here. We just had, yesterday was the 13th of September. It was one of the anniversary days of the apparitions at Fatima. Not much was said by Our Lady there, other than the fact that she encouraged them to continue praying and to continue offering sacrifices. It was words of encouragement from the Blessed Virgin and the promise of the miracle to come in October for all to see. And I think that that's I was thinking about that on, sorry, that was on Friday. Wait, today's Saturday. Yeah. So I was thinking that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. I was reflecting about that, is that at St. Gertrude's, we do the Fatima Rosary processions every 13th from May to October, where we do the 15 decades processing publicly. And we also do it when somebody is up here in Milwaukee. And I know that there are other places that other churches that do similar type of things. I think I saw pictures from, I think, Father Benedict's Minor Seminary, where they were having a little rosary procession yesterday and stuff like that. So I know there are other people that do similar types of things, but we have to have the gut check of how devoted am I to showing up to that, because that is something where Our Lady asked for those rosaries and the sacrifices for the very combating of the errors of Russia spreading throughout the world. And that is what we're witnessing right here, right now, as we look. And that reality is, how much do I offer in the way of sacrifices? How often do I actually pray for the good of my country and in the world, and for peace and for these things? I think every single one of us would, if we look honestly and at it, will realize that we probably fall short of what we should be doing in that regard. Now, some may do pretty good, but realize they could probably do a little bit more. And others might look in the mirror and say, I do almost nothing, and as I always say to people, it's not that looking at that reflection is not, and seeing something you don't like is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it shows where at least now you have your start point to where you can build off of and do more for. So I do think that that's the number one thing overall. The secondary part to that will be as well, though, yeah, it is, if you have that breakdown of those 4 points, I honestly, that is what we can do in terms of sort of this national election. But the question really becomes, honest, if any traditional Catholic looks at it, if I look at it through your 4 points, numbers 2 through 4 should basically be out the window, at this point. That shouldn't be on the table for anybody. No trad should be out there putting Trump memes up, or walking around with a t-shirt with them with wounded in the ear or anything like that, because this is not a man who's not here, who's your friend. This is a man who is actively destroying our society, who is actively promoting things that we abhor. This is a man who radically stands against so much goodness and is a personal reprobate himself. Like, the idea that I would put on a Trump hat or fly a flag or something like that makes me feel sick to my stomach. The only thing that, in my opinion, is left is, would you pull the lever, as it were, to vote for him? And I think honestly that comes down to one's personal perception of, do you think that there's actually anything substantially worthwhile that separates the two? And I don't think that there is, my personal opinion. Now, I also don't begrudge somebody who does. I don't think that I'm never going to stand there and say you're a fool for going and voting or something like that. But I honestly don't think that we should view that as the most minor of operations that we can do for the good of society. Because question number one, does your vote even matter? Which I think, largely speaking, it doesn't. Question number two is, are we supporting somebody that actually represents differences? And I fail to see any substantial level that we have when it comes to the national debt that rose, when it comes to inflation that rose, when it comes to COVID that was a disaster that on all fronts, when it comes to removal of rights, across the board, it's horrifying what we've lost in such a short period of time. And in my opinion, I think a character like Trump is used to make the general movement of socialistic change and government control takeover more palatable for the conservative minded people. Whereas if somebody like a Biden or a Harris were to promote certain things, well, then we would hate that, naturally speaking. But with those changes, same changes could come in with a red hat on and a guy who holds rallies and sort of has a personality cult, then I think it becomes more digestible and more acceptable, and less resisted, and sort of flies under the radar. And so for me, looking at it as a spread of the errors of Russia, I think of it terms sort of like people who have already gone through and witnessed those things. People like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who speaks of the need to resist lies at all times, because when it comes to the takeover of society, when it comes to the destruction of all that is important and good in our lives, and comes to government control of things, well, our minds are the one thing that we can control, where we can keep them from ever actually fully possessing on their part. And as soon as we start giving credence to and support to their lies, then we've lost that. We've opened that door for them to creep in. And for me, that's why I thought this kind of idea was an important one, because I'm not against voting. I'm not against voting for a lesser of two evils.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against for holding my nose and going in there and doing what I think is like, I detest this person. I detest so much that they represent, but there's some tangible aspect of good that I think can come from it. I don't reject those ideas. I just reject the no. I care only about truth, because our Lord God is truth, and in everything that I see, I can't see anything beyond just the veil of deception and lies. And so that's why, me personally, I won't have anything to do with that vote. Now, if somebody does vote, if you, at the end of the day, you do vote, then doesn't bother me in the least. I understand the urge and the need or desire to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that if we could walk away with it, if people walk away from this thing, still thinking that I'm going to cast a vote, you should at least feel like you should have to take a shower after you do so.
Right.
You should, do not go out trying to virtual signal people by, into promoting Trump. Do not go out there thinking you're heroic by going to the poll or anything like that. You're not. It's you are making a judgment on how perhaps maybe I can do, maybe even give a modicum of hope to society, and that's why I'm choosing this end. If it does even the slightest bit of good, okay, fine, I can accept that. That's fine. But we should all we should all realize that our primary action has to be a spiritual. It has to be. It has to be. You know, my where I'm going to cast my vote is going to be upon the only one who counts and actually has can hear my petition and actually directly influence the outcome, which is Almighty God, who's because He has the hand of providence and everything, and it's not going to be for a man. I'm not going to, as the scriptures say, put my trust into princes. It's going to be, I'm going to, I'm going to petition our Lord to do that. And yeah, if there were a candidate to come along where I thought, even maybe I thought that there was a chance of there being a real legitimate difference, I would vote for them today. I would vote for them tomorrow. I just don't see it that way. That's my from my take on these things.
Well, and I'd say, Father, obviously, yeah, I mean, points well made for sure. I guess one of the things for me that I see with Trump, and I think we can actually see, is that he's kept us out of wars. And I know we don't want to go too long here tonight. We don't have to go in depth into this, but I do think that that's, in my mind, a big part of this. I think culturally, yeah, Trump, he's a little better on abortion, et cetera. But I think in terms of war, I think he is demonstrably better. I mean, is that going to continue to be the case? I don't know. But I to me, that is already worth my vote. I think to keep America from putting its fingers in every pie around the world.
Yeah, and I could sort of see that aspect. I mean, there was not really a wave of fresh new conflict under his reign, and until more recently, I sort of was like, well, if there's going to be a kudo box, that would be the box to put it in. Now I'm not 100% sure, because it's based on more of the what if than it is of the substantiating evidence. The what we have to go on is that he didn't put us into a war, but he also did kill millions of people by COVID. So that's sort of the.
But he didn't do the mandate though with COVID. Right. I mean,
he didn't. But
I think he was wrong with the jab, etc. Of course, I mean we agree there. But I do think that it was a major difference in terms of mandating or not. I mean, Biden was the one who came in and tried to, and big companies tried to make people do that. And I don't think Trump would have allowed that. To me, it's another reason to vote for Trump, because I think Trump, he might do something like a jab, but I don't think he's going to mandate it.
I think the contrary, because the thing about it is that he stood by while it all went on and didn't stop companies, states, other places from mandating those things. And I would have forgiven so much of all of that, the jabs included, if at this point in time he came out and said, listen, I didn't get everything right with it. I didn't, we learned things after the fact. I had bad people around me. I should have never gave you Fauci to eat from his plate, every single day if I put him on TV. But he hasn't done any of those things. He hasn't come out with even the remotest. At the debate itself, he said, like, I gave you masks, I gave you respirators, I gave you the vaccine to Kamala. And it's like, you're still promoting those things. You're still promoting masks, which made people sick, ventilators, which made people die, and the vaccine, which has killed countless. And it's like, you're not apologetic about it. He recently had stated he's still friends with Fauci. How do we stand at this point and realize, like, oh yeah, this is where this is like a good thing? And so for me, I think I would have been much more facilitated to forgive him, to give him another chance to do these things if there was a modicum of even any kind of regret about how that was handled. But he thinks he was the bee's knees on the thing. And
what he has done though, he has aligned himself with RFK Jr., whose number one issue is anti-big pharma, and he's given RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan and that that team basically the charge to make America healthy again. And I mean,
but he's promised them nothing. That's the key takeaway. He's done it for the votes, so he doesn't have the contrary vote in the election. And RFK Jr. himself said he's promised him nothing in return. And that's the key. I think as soon as the election is done, if Trump wins, RFK Jr., they're going to disagree about something and he's going to kick him to the curb like he does so many other people. And I think,
that's possible. It's possible. Yeah.
America's going to be left to the cheeseburgers and the diet soda of Donald Trump himself consumes,
Right.
and I think it's, all of the any kind of an idea of restraint on big pharma it was Trump that removed all of that and facilitated more federal funding or more pharmaceutical funding to go into federal policies. And it was so, but in addition to that, back to the war part of it, is why I say it's also like outside of that, it makes me wonder what would actually happen if those, like, it's one thing to stand there and say, these conflicts never would have happened if I were president. But there's no way to prove that. That's what he basically is saying at this point. Israel wouldn't have gotten invaded by Hamas, and Russia never would have invaded Ukraine. Well, it wasn't long after he left that Russia did invade Ukraine. That plan didn't come up overnight. Moreover, the encroachment on Russia from NATO was done in part under his watch and his promotion. And so I think, that's part of what made Putin mad. Did he maybe see a little bit of an opening because it was going to be softer on response? Maybe, but he was already mad before Biden came along about what the West was doing. Israel, there is no greater supporter of Israel. And I think really when you really want to find out what team people play for, it comes down to the Israeli question. And there was, and I mean, Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, giving true credence to the Zionist movement. Trump just in 2023 had a reception of like this grand Jewish award thing from the at I think it was at Bethminster, his place in Bethminster in New York, and where he accepted this award, and he had this, and this rabbi wasn't going to talk, and Trump insisted that he talk. It's the introduction of the reward, and the man repeatedly referred to, soon we will have the opportunity, soon we will be able to build the third temple in Jerusalem, and it's thanks to Donald Trump that we're able to do that. And so it was like do I think that if Hamas invaded Israel, we would have been less likely to go to war or fund war in the Middle East if Trump was in there? Not a chance. He's got a Jewish son-in-law and a Christian apostate daughter who became a Jewess. Of course, he's deep in the pockets of those people. He put what was his name, Ross, who was part of the Rothschild Foundation, as the head of his economic council and in his cabinet and stuff like that. And it's also happened to be the guy who bailed out and him when the Taj Mahal in Las Vegas went belly up and things like that. And so I agree. We didn't get into wars, but I just fear that, again, it's sort of like a veneer that was more based on circumstances than it was on actual, because I don't see any substantial policy that keeps us from those points.
So Father, to change subject a little bit here, it's slightly. My view of things, if we get Kamala Harris in as a president, basically, I mean, she herself is an idiot, and she's basically just a puppet and whatnot. She'll have a technocracy behind her, right? She'll have technology coming to basically suppress us and whatnot. And what I see coming is more or less the early 20th century Mexico Caius government, which is going to leave us as Catholics as basically the Cristeros. And I guess my question to you, do you think I'm over exaggerating the threat?
No, not necessarily. I would question whether it makes a difference which side is in there, though. For this reason, or for these reasons, one is that although I do think this, like, I think it's also possible that we don't end up in a situation either side that's in there, because I think that the way the faith stands now, we as traditional Catholics, in comparison to the greater whole, are such a fringe minority in comparison to like what Mexico was, that I don't know that they necessarily trouble themselves so much about it, as a legitimate possibility as well. You know, that like, okay, so what? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's what, a couple 100,000 traditional Catholics in America. There's 360 million people. Like, what do they care, right? That's a statistic.
Yeah, but you know, you had that Christian Baker in Colorado, Father. Remember that guy? Who, I mean, I think that they might go out and try to find you. You know, these people are nasty.
Oh, they
you know,
might.
these
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, I
extremists.
think about I don't discount it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I agree 100% that it's entirely possible. I mean, when you look at when England became Protestant, they chased Catholics to the furthest ends of the kingdom.
Right.
There were, the Isle of Ailsa, which is just so happened to be off the coast of Trump's course, the Ailsa course, in the golf course over in Scotland there, which is Turnberry, which is, in and of itself beautiful. But that it looks like an upside down half egg in the ocean. It's just a giant rock. And there was battles that took place on that rock to capture Catholics who were just trying to escape from the persecution over there. So, like, if you do that in 500 years ago, now with technology, forget it. I mean, they can come and find us anywhere. There is no living off the grid. There is no successfully hiding from this. You can't think that we're going to. So I entirely think it's true that it could very well happen. I also don't know necessarily that one way or another it matters who's in there, because if as so long as we stand for the things that are truly righteous and good, we're inconvenient to both sides, and therefore the both ends would want to eradicate that, because neither one of them is for freedom. And if you admit it in one aspect, then it can be admitted into the others. And so, like, you see it with Trump, for instance, with these anti-Israel, pro-Palestine things that take place on college campuses. He wants to criminalize the burning of an American flag, and he wants to criminalize anti-Semitic speech and things like that. Well, not that we are big promoters of free speech, but at the same time, if we live in a society that is based on that unbridled freedom in any direction, and we happen to benefit from it, well, as soon as you start promoting the reduction of that, the removal of those things on any topic, then you can do so for every topic as soon as it becomes inconvenient to what the agenda is. So that's why it's stuff like that makes me think it really perhaps wouldn't matter. In fact, to your point, Dan, I almost feel I would hate to live. I don't want to live through something like that. But if there was to be real, actual, substantial change to come from something, it's almost you need the hard smack in the face to have people wake up and realize they have to fight them.
Suffering,
rather than
suffering,
it's
right? That's a discussion we have around our family from time to time. Is to say that I'm actually kind of white pilled in the sense that I believe that we have more or less bought it. We've kind of lived the Fatima punishment. We've kind of lived a lot of this, and I feel like we're in a slow road back, and it's going to be it's going to have a lot of dips and ups and downs and whatnot. But it's one of the things that we talk about in our family, that there has not been the sort of physical suffering that would go along with a true revival, or that would precede a true revival. And until we've gone through that, we're sick, we're lazy, we're immoral, we got all these different things, and that's gonna be a hard trough to come back from.
Yeah, and the question is, like, do we see something like that in our lifetimes or not? Only God knows that. I mean, like, some of the things that you see about those latter times, it's it sort of speaks to the weakness of men in society today, or mankind in society today, Catholics in these times. But the fact that ours is sort of that dry persecution, as it were, that look at all on the other end, all the things that we have to withstand. We have to withstand the bombardment of temptation from so many different sources, and a society which is so devoid of goodness and God.
From this,
exactly, yeah, from the all-seeing devices that are everywhere all the time, and which truly corrupt our minds and persuade us to do these things. And that's why, honestly, I think that was one of the things, after the debate, I was like, if we banned television and internet from the world and just went by purely the information, like in a black and white setting, and nobody could be influenced by talking heads, I don't think anybody would vote for either of these people. We are so influenced by our consumption of things that have bias or spin or points to convince. But I also think if we didn't have those things, we wouldn't let it stand that this is what we'd be left with at the end to choose from either. I don't think we'd be here if it wasn't for all of that. I honestly think that we would have probably done something far more drastic earlier on. So,
you would have had smaller government too, right? You would have had to have had smaller government, because you wouldn't have had the ability to govern. I think that's a big problem with all politics, is globalism, right? I mean, everything's too big, everything's too globalized, nothing is personal, and it's communism, right? It's Marxism. It's take out the individual. It's all about the conglomeration of the mass, and it's disgusting.
And we can certainly all agree that with no pope as that beacon in the storm, we've got no chance to really. I mean, our ceiling politically is so low that we're never going to achieve much politically until we get the church back again.
Yeah. I think you are precisely correct in that regard too. It's because of the fact that the good things that you see from what is considered the West, right? Mainly Europe and the United States. The good things that we have are sort of the remnants of Christendom.
Right.
So those are, like, what is considered civilization these days is these remnants of what the church has represented and maintained and spread throughout the world in these places. But we are now, it is like smoke that has been left in a room, but the fire has been turned out. That dissipates over time, and it becomes thinner and thinner, and we are seeing clearly again that the room is clearing out, and these things are not.
It's always funny. I think people really get upset when you say Judeo-Christian civilization, in the West, and I think it's actually completely true, because I think all the good things came from the Christian side, and all the bad things came from the other guys. I think that's it's not that unfair. I mean, in Christianity, obviously, you look at Luther and the actual Christians who settled America. Yeah, they had lots of problems, and that's you see a lot of the moral issues now. And I think it stems also from the fact that those who settled our country were certainly not Catholic. Most of them were not Catholic, but you still have some Christian standards, I guess, that shine through. But
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say, like, understanding that that the Jewish question is a central part of what goes on in society today is a very unpopular but very important and necessary thing to understand. I mean, who were the proponents of Marxism and communism and the destruction of morality and the things that have plagued society? That who got rid of the idea of who promoted and and institutionalized usury as a means of of destroying the financial aspect, who
Right.
corrupted society by means of birth control and abortion and pornography and all of these other things. It's at this and entertainment and technology at the center of every single aspect for a group that represents a very small minority of society. It is a largely influenced sphere.
And that's objectively true, Father. And that's the
Yes.
crazy thing, that it's like you're not just pulling that out of a hat. That's not a conspiracy. Like, you can look at the people who run pornography in Hollywood,
Yeah.
etc. That's objectively true. They are Jewish. I mean, maybe we'll get demonetized for it. Maybe we'll get kicked off of YouTube, but it's true. I mean, you can't
That's what
fact
it
check
is.
that, because it's the truth. And so
Yeah.
I suppose if
And
you're a
it's
big fan of
and
Hollywood and pornography, then you can be a big fan of the Jews. But, well,
yeah,
sorry guys, we're not.
yeah. And it's like it's like I say, it's like, I'm not against the guy who makes bagels on the street corner. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not
Right.
it's not a racist thing. It's to say who is behind, and it is as Fahey says, the forces of organized naturalism. That's who he refers to when he says that.
And there's no
So
relationship between them and the Ten Commandments, and
no,
I think that it's, absolutely, it's just two totally different things.
how can you promote all the things contrary to nature and be promoters at the same time of the basic laws of the natural law?
Right.
Like it's a total dichotomy. It's completely contrarian, and
Yeah.
and it's one of those things. But again, everything that we talk about here, it, and that's why it was funny when the teens, the teen podcast. I forget what when Annie and Gianna, when I did that, they asked me what my favorite podcast on Catholic Family Podcast was. I couldn't tell them a favorite, but I told them what I thought was one of the most important ones that I've ever done was actually the Hegelian dialect. If we look at it through just a purely one side versus the other, then we will always miss, and we will always fall into the trappings of what is truly going to control the outcome of it, and we never pull ourselves out of this aspect. And so if we purely look at it as, and the JQ falls into that, is like, because the tendency for some people is well, then therefore, like, maybe it was good what happened in the 40s and 30s and 40s in Germany. It's like, no, that was also wicked and evil
Right.
too. Like,
Exactly.
do not fall into that dichotomy, because it's not new. It's not this idea of having two seemingly fighting factions and one side needing to be the good guy and one side needing to be the bad guy.
Right.
This is not a new concept. Hegel developed this, I think the 1600s or 1700s. I'm not good with dates, and it was utilized by people from essentially from the early days of our country, especially through the elite schools like Harvard and Yale, and the secret societies like the Skull and Bones contained within those institutes of education. The very purpose was to influence through this Hegelian means the outcome of things in society, and that's why I struggle so much with with politics. It's like we're missing the point. We're thinking we have to choose one of these two candidates, and it's like, no, I reject both of them because they're both bad, and I'm going to do my good where I can. I'm going to, I'm going to look at this upcoming election to see, is there something in my local, my town, my county, my policies that are coming up that influence my life here and now in the area that I live in, those are the things. Because yeah, maybe I'll go to the polls, but it'll be for those things, not so much some. We want the easy button. We're going to fix it by finding the one, like, what solution. But our savior is not orange. Our savior is
Right.
Christ. So it's.
Our Savior is definitely
and-
also not in the Vatican. I have to give a quick shout out that we're going to do a podcast on Monday, live show with Mario Dirksen and hopefully other guests as well, talking about the craziness, the normal. It's actually very normal. This is not unusual. Bergoglio says these things all the time, but for some reason,
this one has really
people are
fired. I
freaking
don't
out
know
about
Twitter.
it.
I don't know about the rest of
Yeah.
social media, but it's really fired up Twitter. That it's just apocalyptic in the minds of the your semi-trads. I can't understand what's different about this comment than the dozens or hundreds of other things that Bergoglio said and done.
But it gives us a chance to talk with Mario in a live show, so I'll take it. The plan, I think, is for Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe. I'll get that officially up here after our show here, but definitely stay tuned for that. I know it's a Monday during the day. I know a lot of people have to work, but everyone who can, definitely please be there. I want to show also something that Mom says. She sees Father's points, which has more hope in people, maybe that we can take a little step for ourselves, even if it's writing a cow pie, and God willing, I think she means, we get another chance to take more. Yeah, and I think it is, Father. It's a difficult thing, and I think that people have misconstrued some of the things I've said when I said that you got to be careful when you don't vote. It can be sinful, etc. Because we did a show with Father. You and I did it with Louis Verrecchio. My only point was, again, that if you just don't take it seriously, if you're just like, nah, I don't care, I'm not gonna pay attention, because that is actually against patriotism. It's against virtue. Right. So I think that's my only point. Don't just go and bury your head in the sand and go cry all day and whine on Twitter. That's if you, like Father, make a very conscious decision to not vote for Donald Trump, I don't blame you even a tiny bit. So I mean, it is a really hard decision, one I certainly wish we didn't have to make. But
there's a Protestant church. There's a Protestant church out in California that basically they're a big church, and they decided they were going to run for school board, and they ran for school board and they won the election, and basically they took over the school board, and now they've purged out all pornography. They've started to bring in as much Christian stuff as they possibly can. It's in Southern California somewhere, and obviously our numbers aren't to where we could do something like that, but you see where you can be active without having to go red, blue, to your point, Father.
For sure. Like, I mean, I always talk about it in Westchester, or the area surrounding us in St. Gertrude's. Butler County, right, is the county that we live in. It's the county just north of Cincinnati. And our sheriff is Sheriff Richard Jones. He's appeared on Fox News at times. He looks what a 9-year-old would draw if they were told to draw a sheriff. The big cowboy hat, the mustache, everything. Right. And I would vote for that guy 1,000 times. So every year if I had to. I'd start pretending to be dead people, whatever it took to make sure that guy was in there, because he is absolutely fantastic. I mean, and by the way, kidding, internet, I'm not going to pretend to be a dead person. But honestly, he was monumental for us in the COVID times. He was when our Republican governor, DeWine, came out and said and instituted the mask mandate. 20 minutes afterwards, he was standing behind a lectern saying, "Don't call us if somebody comes into your store not wearing a mask, because we're not coming. People should be able to choose." So I never went to the grocery store with a mask on. Wow. Think about that. That's
for those times that was big.
Yeah, and so I was also pretty much just looking for a fight at that point, anyways. But that's so it's but also it was and then again it was also he that came out when they tried to put additional restrictions on based on a flare up or whatever. He came out and said, "There's been I don't know what the governor is talking about, because he didn't call me." And I don't know what hospitals he's talking about being full, because I go to the hospitals here every day and there's plenty of beds. So what he's using to make this, I have no idea, but it has nothing to do with what's happening on the ground. I'm like, holy moly, to call out the governor like on point for stuff like that. Is he perfect? Far from it, but I would vote for that guy a gazillion times. And
Right.
because it actually has effect on life where we are. And so like that's why I think that being involved, being conscious of what's going on, being understanding the issues at hand, and taking action in areas that we can actually influence change are important. But when we see these huge, when we see like if we approach it from the top down, you're going to get nothing but globalism and one world agenda. When you approach it from the bottom up, you can start to take one rung of the ladder back at a time, when you couple it with prayer and grace and things like that. And so that's where I think hope actually lies. It's not in Trump. It's in something you can affect at your local level, and that maybe then that spreads to the next rung up the ladder, because now you all of a sudden have a much more common sense, natural law based reality around you. Well, now you can influence your neighbors, and so on and so forth. But when we're looking at the choices that we have, I just don't see, to me, like anything that like screams substantially different or moves us in a different direction than one or the other. And it's like, okay, well, that's just the hand that we have right now. That's what we're sort of the situation that we're dealt with. And like I said, I don't begrudge anybody who chooses to go vote, but but I can't I cannot understand, if we actually look through, why anybody is proud to be supportive of something like that. It's and moreover, I just can't.
And it's easy. I think it's easy to get caught up in it, Father. Right? It's easy to get caught up in that fervor, and really thinking that this is a conservative. He's for the people. He's a populist. He's a libertarian. And again, I think he can be really funny. I think he can be really entertaining, and I think there are some things that I like that he did. But I think you're absolutely right when you say that he's certainly not conservative. He's not a good guy. He's not moral. There's nothing like this. Is not a guy that we should be rooting for. It is, again, it is lesser of two evils. Again, in my opinion.
Like I said, that was my biggest disappointment in the debate, that he wasn't very entertaining. Because I think he is actually funny. I think he does have like golden comedic timing for some of the lines he delivers, and I think his sarcasm and his wit are usually pretty good. Maybe he's getting old, maybe whatever, but or he's overcoached or whatever it was. Who knows? But I'm like, my thought is that it's all political theater, and well, theater should at least be entertaining. And so it's, but it wasn't. And but yeah, I think ultimately, but look at, if we step back and look at some of the things that we know out there, like if you read like Animal Farm, I can't really in good conscience as a priest recommend people read 1984, because there's a lot of loose things in that, but I mean, it is extraordinarily telling. Brave New World, again, same thing as 1984, but it's extraordinarily telling of the things indicative of our society. What is the, but let's just take Animal Farm, the one that we can talk about without and recommend without really any danger to morality and seeing that. What is it that you see that it's the animals change things little by little, and they convince the population of the animals that they're not. That by their lives, by their deceit, by their sort of like, pay attention to this, but don't pay attention to this. All the things, it all changes until all of a sudden they realize that it's all gone. And that's why I think that's the real danger of like throwing support behind one side or another, is that we at least on some intellectual capacity, we facilitate that. And yes, it's, I can largely speaking continue to reject the lies by understanding what's going on, and like the vote is just a small tiny action, in that regard. But it's just like, it's sort of like, if I reject the end, I reject the whole. And that's, that's why I just kind of think to myself, no, like I'm until somebody shows me something different, gives me something, proposes something new, something to say, okay, let's try that. I'm at a point where I gave Trump an opportunity, and he failed. So to use his words, fired.
You fired. Nice, Dad. Any last words before
No,
we go?
and I think, just to wrap things up here, I think I would say that, Father, I definitely agree with the substance of the discussion, that if there is no difference between the two, then I don't think we're compelled to vote for one of the or another when the difference is here. There's no substantive difference between the two. Personally, I do believe that the Make America Great, Make America Healthy, Make America whatever is a step in the right direction. It's a populist nationalist. I think it's going to go in good directions. It's going to take us, in to being, like Trump says, more or less, to being more healthy, being having lower interest rates, lower gas prices, all that kind of stuff. Is it going to help put Christ as king? No, but maybe it gets us a step closer to that. I think that would be my only thing that I would kind of conclude on here, is to say that I see Trump and what he didn't accomplish in his first as basically being, it was Trump for the machine. He had almost no, there was no MAGA movement in 2016. It was basically just Trump, and I think it was the machine more or less chewed him up and spit him out. Didn't even support him in his reelection as RNC, Ronna McDaniel and whatnot. But I think that given another try, I think it's going to be, I think we're going to see a real good second 4 years out of him. We're going to see a destruction of the Democratic Party, the deep state, and whatever. I could very well be wrong. And that's just, that's, I think what I really want to make an emphasis here is that I'm not saying, hey, I know this is what's going to happen. I know how this is going to play out. I just have a good feeling. And it tends to be the same bad gut feeling that you have, Father. I have a good gut feeling in that way. And it's all speculation, and we can't know. And so I'm the same way. I don't condemn those who don't vote for Donald Trump for the same reason that you don't condemn those who do. So I think in that sense, we kind of started this whole thing out with a promise to have some disagreements. I don't know if they've been real exciting disagreements, but no, I do kind of, I'm not a Trump worshiper, but I do kind of think that there is a substantial difference between him and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the Democrats at this point. So that's
I
all.
just think if I play even one small part in having to deal with Kamala being on our television screen for the next 4 years, I will never forgive myself.
Right.
So I think just
But
for
I also-
everyone's
yeah.
sake, just not to have to hear her laugh ever again, or see her face.
Well,
Please,
that's-
everyone vote Trump.
That's legitimate. I wouldn't want to listen to her speak more than I have to.
Father's going to
But-
vote now.
But no, I'm not. I mean, it's just at the end of the day, the best way I could put it is, I hope you're right, but I have no expectations of anything at all, because
Yeah, that's fair.
it's one of those things, like, I have to suspend belief in the concrete evidence that's there, from the economy to to global political structure, to natural rights, to removal of our own individual rights in the country that we are supposed to be promoted to, even to the healthy thing. I mean, I agree. I'd almost be inclined to do so if the ideas that Kennedy talks about now in terms of health were to have any bearing of coming to fruition, that we could get rid of the seed oils, and we could get rid of the carcinogens and the sugars and poisons that we consume. But again, I just don't think. I think we'll still have the same choices at the same grocery store that they, once 4 years from now. And
yep. I can't tell you.
Or we'll be eating cat food or cats.
Or cats. That's right.
So it's maybe eating cats is the better solution. Maybe the Haitians are onto something. At least that's natural. It doesn't have all those poisonous things.
Don't deep fry them. Don't deep fry them.
If you do, use good oils like
exactly.
Olive oil, right?
So we'll end the show on that. Please, ladies and gentlemen, don't eat your dogs and cats, and don't eat your neighbors' dogs and cats. That's actually even worse. All you Ohioans, I don't know, Father. Gotta be careful with these guys. Everyone in the comment section, we really appreciate you guys. Some of you have been here through the whole show. Thanks for coming in. Please like this video before you leave. That will get more people to be able to view it. That's kind of how YouTube works. Again, anyone who's not watching this live, please comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. And again, please stay tuned. On Monday, we'll be coming on again with Mario, which should be a really interesting show. And I think a really important show to connect what Bergoglio just said about, ecumenism, how every religion leads to the one God, and actually how we can connect that directly to Vatican II. That's actually right from Vatican II, and that's what we're going to attempt to do. So it comes right from the council, where we all understand that, or many of us do, but let's try to get it so that our neighbors, our semi-trad friends, that they get to see it as well, so that they all understand that we have not had a true pope since 1958. Father McKenna, it's been a blast as always. You're always welcome back. Whenever we have any other topic, maybe again it's some sort of craziness like don't barbecue cats. Maybe it's politics. Maybe it's Hegelian dialectic type stuff.
Your philosophy shows were outstanding, and just outstanding.
I have to get back to them. It just takes. I got out of the habit of looking for the next one to do and putting it. I have more I need to do. They're heavy research. They're research heavy. Like that. It has to take some time to go through and parse through the stuff a bit. But I have other ones that I want to do. And I do think,
they're life changing. They helped me to very much reorient.
Yeah,
so I loved them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think they are important for people to understand, and we'll definitely have to get back to that. And I have never-ending list of ideas of shows and things like that. Was there anything in the? I didn't really necessarily pay too much attention to the comments section. Was there any questions that we didn't?
I think the ones I noticed I threw up, but there weren't too many questions for you, Father. I think a lot of people agreeing with you, a few people who didn't, I think, but I didn't notice anything that was necessary to answer. But if anyone does, please, you can email me at kevin89davis@gmail.com. Or you can probably contact Father, I don't know, sgg.org. But you can send it to me and I'll send it to Father. But I don't think so, Father. I think I was paying pretty close attention to the comments, and mostly people adding their own comments or and good stuff, everybody. But I don't think there's any questions that we missed. But we'll have to do it again, Father. It was really a blast. It was nice. We've had issues having Father on Restream, so that what the program we're using now. But we'll just have to do it, I guess, when you're in Milwaukee, Father.
Milwaukee, right? Exactly. I think it's
right,
Ohio.
Exactly. Thing. Yeah, but we'll see. We'll figure that. We want to do more live shows with priests, especially. I think we found it to be really rewarding for people to be able to ask questions, etc. We're working on those with different priests and different topics, etc. So also stay tuned for that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss any of that lovely stuff. Father, Dad, until next time, God bless you. Everyone in the comment section, everyone watching, God bless you all as well. And may God